go.
Good morning, Katie Gross.
Good morning, Molly Kush already.
Oh, how are you today?
I'm moving through the crud that is going around Minnesota. I feel like it was my turn to get it. Aside
Yeah.
from that, I'm coming off of a big 40th birthday celebration, and I'm excited to
Ah,
be here to talk to you about cannabis in my
happy
cool
solar,
shirt.
happy solar return. Thank you for
Yeah.
waking up this morning and being open to a discussion.
Yeah.
So everyone, we have Katie Gross. She's from Your Higher Path Healing. She is a spiritual nurse and integrative wellness coach. Am I getting that correct?
I wouldn't call myself a coach right now. Everything's kind of up in the air because I've let my nursing
Okay.
license go. So I would
Oh,
say
wow.
I, the best word to describe me right now would be spiritual mentor.
Okay. Tell us a little bit about your business and what you do, Katie.
Yeah, so I started Your Higher Path Healing back in 2018, and it started with energy medicine, healing touch. So I help women come into a deeper relationship with their body and help reconnect their bodies and their spirits through that modality. And then through the course of time, my relationship with cannabis kind of grew, and now I offer cannabis meditations and one-on-one private cannabis sessions to come into deeper relationship with the medicine as a plant spirit. And then I also work with the plant medicine of cacao, which is raw chocolate in ceremony and ritual form. So
Yeah,
those
I
are the
love
ways that
that.
I can help people come into a deeper relationship with themselves and their divine.
Okay. Well, thank you for that really important work. I think this is such a new thing for people. People are really being open to learning and discovering about cannabis and realizing that maybe, all the great things that modern medicine can give us, it maybe isn't the entire piece. And maybe cannabis is that last missing piece for some people, right? Cannabis isn't for everyone. So that's part of the reason why we came on to talk today. We are going to discuss cannabis psychosis, and we met each other only a short while ago, right? And
Hmm.
when we first met, you really wanted to talk about this case that had happened in California. Do you want to fill us in a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so there was a case of a woman named Bryn, and I'm not going to get her name right.
I think
It's
it's Speecher from what I've heard.
Thank you, Speecher,
Yeah.
who was a woman in her 30s, in a newer relationship, took two hits off of a bong, and then entered into cannabis psychosis in which she stabbed her boyfriend 108 times. And just recently, she went through the court proceedings. They found her guilty of manslaughter, and the judge let her off without any jail time. And so there was a lot of discussion and comparison between cannabis and alcohol. And, if you hit somebody as a drunk driver, you're liable. And why isn't she in jail? And nobody else was really in the cannabis industry really talking about this. And I just wanted an opportunity to kind of share about, how this is going to continue to perpetuate the stigma and the fear around the plant medicine. That there's much more for us to unpack and learn here versus just comparing cannabis to alcohol. And it's totally different. And from a spiritual perspective, I'm just also curious, like what you have to, what you might think about this idea if we believe that we're constantly being kind of moved towards healing and the endocannabinoid system is in a state of balance or supporting balance, what happened here, just to be
Yeah.
curious about what unfolded that had, in the physical body, in the spirit, that something like this would take place. So
I've heard you talk about even people when they're moving through spiritual places, tapping into like almost that spiritual rage and generational rage that really she could have had lingering in her body that just came out in that moment,
snapped.
right? Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. So just a little bit more specifics for the people that are kind of tuning in. This happened in 2018. Bryn was a 27-year-old woman involved with Chad Malalia at that time, who was 26. They had a very new relationship. It was maybe like 3 weeks into it. They did smoke some cannabis from a bong. It was reported to be very high potency. And then this woman having done that, goes into this state of cannabis induced psychosis, stabs the person many times, over 100 times, also killed her dog, also was in the midst of stabbing herself um, at the time the police arrived and didn't even realize that the police had come. So she was just not herself in that moment, I think is fair to say. She was found guilty. It was involuntary manslaughter, and she was sentenced to 2 years probation. But as you said, no real jail time. And then she does have to do community service. So there's a pretty big outrage about this happening. But let's delve into more of like the specifics for cannabis psychosis. I mean, there's a whole host of things, and as we mentioned before, cannabis isn't for everyone. So tell me what you know about cannabis psychosis.
Yeah, so it was one of the things that kept me away from cannabis for as long as I was, because I thought that I would take a hit and it would like fry my brain or something would snap in me that would be you know, not reversible, right? And so, what we know about cannabis psychosis is those who struggle with mental health conditions like bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, who have underlying inabilities to understand what is real and not real, and struggles with reality, that those folks are a little higher risk for cannabis psychosis. Um, and really, at that point, really to be cognizant and careful when undergoing any plant medicines for that reason. Now, I also think it's interesting. She one of the things to point out as well is she was an inexperienced cannabis user. And so when we look at high potency under a bong, like that's a large dose of cannabis. And so when we're looking at those big doses, I think that the risk for cannabis psychosis is much elevated.
Right. And I think the research would really back that up too, right? So they found in multiple research studies, and I did want to link one to the discussion that we're having today. There's an article from Translational Psychiatry published in 2022. It had three authors, and it was a nationwide study. It was a very large study, over 230,000 participants, and it aimed to break down three things. What are the rates of cannabis associated symptoms requiring medical attention in a large international study? Do the rates vary by demographics, so age, location, gender? Cannabis substance use patterns, so like what type of product you use, the route of use, and then other substances that might be on board. And then lastly, as you spoke to, individual vulnerabilities. Does this person have like a history of mental health, right? Um, so, in conclusion, they found that young users should be avoided, and I think they identified the age of 25. So, really, people under the age of 25 don't have complete brain development. Might not be a great idea for them to have prolonged and consistent exposure to cannabis, but also the consuming potent forms of cannabis was put people at higher risk, and then those with mental health problems. So speaking directly to what you said, not everyone is a candidate for cannabis.
Yeah. And I think really the the big message I want to get out to consumers who maybe are new to cannabis or they're new to using cannabis from like the healing standpoint is you
Thank you.
really need to know your medicine and where your medicine is coming from. And I look at this experience with this woman and they're newly dating. They don't have an established relationship of trust, right? And then, from the court records, it appears, and most of the court proceedings was related to whether she was consented. The story goes that she took the first hit and she didn't get high. My question is, how long was she how long was she waiting between inhalations? And then she was, coached into taking a second hit, and that is when everything hit her. And so she really wasn't under her own consent with the plant medicine. And I do feel that that plays a role in the reaction that she had and that sacred rage coming forward. not being consented. And yeah, so I think that's
So,
a big part of it that we should be looking at and talking about is consent. And higher concentrations of THC doesn't make better medicine.
right. Yeah, I agree. And I think that hopefully our peoples are starting to get that message. What we also really don't know about her, and maybe you know more about this case because I only learned about it from you just a few short weeks ago, was, did she have mental health conditions? Was she on substances already? Things that can also can be into play here are the use of amphetamines, which many people are on for Adderall or Ritalin or other drugs now for ADHD, even as adults. So, this used to be an occurrence where you'd see it just in children, but now even into an adulthood where this woman's 27 years old, she's over that age 25, but amphetamines, hallucinogens, opioids, and sedatives. Did she have any other medications on board which could have caused this propensity for that? So there's things we need to think about, and I appreciate that you're talking about knowing the source of your medication, right?
Mhm.
And then just knowing if you are a I think the coaching piece too was a good part. Was she under consent? Did she really want to engage in this? Um, I've heard people say, like, especially when they're consuming edibles, like, "Oh, I didn't get high, I didn't feel anything," and I have known a person like that, in real life. So um, lots of things at play here, but I'd really love to hear more of your take on like the spiritual aspect of it too, because I'm kind of like you, Katie. I lean more away from academia. It's very important. And again, I'm going to link all of the, links to this article so that people can really investigate it for themselves. But I'm more of like on the healing side. I love what cannabis does for me just as a person, and I've seen what it can do for other people. And I want to talk more about that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the first thing for me, like when I think about my spiritual practice with cannabis, is that it's a personal relationship as a plant spirit. Plants were put on the earth to support us as humans. There are many other animal species that look to entheogens or plant medicines to chill out, to relax, jaguars eat a root after they've been hunting so that they can chill out, right?
Mm,
And so it's hard for me to reconcile like it being a plant spirit and my friend, and yet it can cause psychosis. So where's the balance
sure.
in that? And I believe that the cannabis is revealing the energy of the body, that it's a non-specific amplifier. It will heighten states of awareness. And so I come back to, did she have repressed sacred rage that just came out in a fury because she was yet another woman in her lineage that, wasn't consented. And so if we believe that, this plant spirit is showing us, is revealing to us what needs to be revealed so that we can heal and move on, isn't it interesting, right? How it plays out in all these different ways and what we're currently seeing in society. And then I think it's important to also, I'm just coming off of a cannabis fast. I
Mm,
think that tolerance breaks are a really important part of any cannabis practice. I learn more through my tolerance, just as much through my tolerance breaks as I do from the medicine
mm,
itself. And, I think this idea of escapism is really, really important to look at. And it is cannabis gives us, it offers us an escape. It offers us this state of being that is bliss. But is it also part of us pulling back and retreating from what we really need to face?
right.
Um, yeah.
It's a healer. It's a tool to healing, Katie, and it's supposed to bring us back to homeostasis, right? And
Mm-hmm.
maybe part of that is purging the things inside of us that keep us sick. And
Yes.
so wouldn't it be nice if there were more safe places where she could have expressed that and gotten that out, and even known that she could use cannabis in that way,
Mhm.
known that that was a possibility, and it's not just about the numbers moving in labs all the time, or it is about cancer going away, right? But cannabis can just I feel like it can just be so much deeper than that. I mean, we already know how complex it is as a plant. We already know how complex the endocannabinoid system is, and really we're learning more about it every day, right? But I think that people are kind of glazing over that spirituality piece and like really how it can heal our soul. And I just want to get back to that. I want to get back
and
to that
and evolve us as a human species in
for
consciousness,
sure.
right? Like, and to reconnect us as a race of the human race. And I
Mm,
think that, you know, there's great potential for cannabis to help us do that work.
mm,
Um, we just, those of us who use it as plant medicine in this spiritual way need to have our voices heard, right? Because
for
it's not
sure.
it's not a popular voice out there that you see out there around limiting or really being selective on your doses and therapeutic dose, right? The cannabis industry is just going to keep us pushing us to use more.
Mm,
Um, but really coming back to the fact that cannabis was used in sacred spiritual practices and ceremonies for thousands of years across all continents. And long before it was the green rush, like that is the root, that is the basis of this plant medicine. And she is to be revered and not feared. And we really need to respect her and respect her medicine. Um, yeah.
agreed, 100%. Tell me how your practice supports people in that way then.
Mm. So I love to work with people who have had a long-standing relationship with cannabis, but want to be more conscious around their use. Um, and then I also work a lot with women who, here's the typical story. They went to a party, they had some edibles, they had no idea what was in them or how much was in them. They had a bad trip, and now they have sworn cannabis off for the rest of their life. And now
Sure.
they're in their 40s and 50s. They have autoimmune issues. They're stressed. They're in perimenopause and they're desperate to have their symptoms go away. And they think, could cannabis be something that could help me? Those are my people. What I do is we go through a consult, we talk about your therapeutic goals, and I help people create a plan that resonates with them, whether that's edibles, whether that's inhalation, and I help kind of create that regimen for them and then walk with them through that process. And then what I really love is offering cannabis healing sessions and meditations. So one-on-one cannabis sessions look like a home visit. I come to your home, um, and I create that sacred space for you to come into relationship with the medicine in your own way in the safety of your own home for your therapeutic goals. And then I do a cannabis meditation the first Thursday of the month on Zoom. We meet at 6 o'clock, we smoke together, and then I lead about a 90-minute guided meditation through a body scan to really allow the medicine into those spaces, to help reveal the energy of the body and to release and let go, and also to accept and to surrender and to flow. So one of my favorite things to do when I'm doing home visits is they'll be like, "Well, I didn't even get high." And it's like, well, the therapeutic goal may not be to get high. It might
Right.
be to take your pain and tension away. And you can have your pain and tension taken away without getting high. And so that I love breaking through people's myths and stereotypes about the plant medicine, and having them come into their own relationship with her. It's my favorite thing.
Yeah. I believe that everyone is entitled to have their own relationship with cannabis. I think it's really beautiful and interesting that you said you learn as much from your tea breaks as you do from, actually indulging in the and consuming the plant because that's also important to do. I think that there sometimes is this big push for like how high can we get the percentage, and like how high can I get? Like how many dabs can I do? Like, that's okay. But I think that sometimes if you can kind of tap into like really where cannabis touches you the most and what it does for you, and just kind of like take a step back and be like, this plant has been in my life for however many years I've been consuming it like this. What if I thought about it in a different way?
Mhm.
Like it's really eye-opening and soul completion. I don't know.
I think
Yeah,
illumination is the word that comes to me, like
thank
soul
you.
illumination.
Yeah, for sure,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah, I just did a
Um,
tea
s-
break, but then I also, with my tea break, I tried Amanita,
okay.
the
How is
mushroom
that
medicine.
going? Yeah.
I cried uncle after 2 weeks because what was
Wow.
revealed to me, interestingly enough, we're talking about sacred rage today, was anger. I got to a place where I was like, bitch, I can't. Like, you can't be like this. Like, what is your problem? And so it was just a lot of soul searching. And I mean, I was doing like somatic practices to like release the anger because it was like
Sure.
really showing itself fearless, fiercely. And
Sure.
and then I, reached out to a couple of, resources and was like, okay, is this legit? Like, is this real? I did some, some Googling and it was like, okay, that is one of the ways that Amanita works is she shows you your own anger. And I
Mm,
thought I just passed some of those things, but
mm.
um, yeah, it definitely revealed where I'd crossed my own boundaries and how that contributed to the anger that I felt. So all
It's
really good lessons, hard
for
decisions to
sure.
make after that knowing, having to like face your shit. But that's
Mm.
why I work with these medicines. That's why I do
Yeah.
that is, my goal in the world is to have a clean heart and to love fully and completely and
Mm.
cleanly. And I believe that that's, what cannabis allows us to do and what she teaches us is how do we love better, not only ourselves, but, our people, our community. So,
I love that, Katie. I really do. I'm so glad there's people like you out there. Please tell everyone where they can find you, and I will, of course, also post all of your links with the story, but give a quick shout out.
yeah, so you can find me at yourhigherpathhealing.com. In the request an appointment, you can book a free cannabis session or cannabis consult, excuse me. I also offer grounding sessions for my healing touch practice. And then all my events are located under events where you can find the monthly cannabis meditations. And I really encourage anyone who hasn't shared their shared intention and community space with cannabis to give it a try and to have your mind blown, to be open to having your mind blown. We can really do amazing big healing work in those community sessions. So
Truly, truly, I believe that. And
like if you feel like you want to dissolve into nothingness and feel God divine in your body, like
yeah, no biggie.
no biggie. It'll change your whole world. It'll be a threshold moment, but if you're ready for that, come find
Yeah.
me.
I love this. Katie, again, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for your energy and thank you for your message about cannabis and how it can really help people. I appreciate the work that you're doing.
Oh, thanks, Molly. I appreciate you too, and thanks for letting me share here.
Of course. All right. Have a great day.
You too.